I could go for hours on Romans 9. So this is a head scratcher, thought or seven for the Calvinist Reformed Tulip people. Just something to think about. I'm not saying I'm right. I'm not saying I know what it means. But Romans 9, have you ever just noticed the punctuation? Why is there all this weird punctuation in English, Romans 9? There's some, like the NIV, that has like poetry, verses or segments. There's parentheses, there's colons, there's semicolons. There's, of course, quotations. Of course, it says as written. For example, in the King James, the New King James, parentheses. Why? And the whole point being made is, have the Calvinist Reformed Tulip people considered this? Whoever translated this into English chose English punctuation for a purpose. At least we hope they were trying their hardest to use American English punctuation that you and I would understand and be able to use to help us decipher the true and actual meaning. Okay, and here's King James continued. Comma. What shall we say then? For he says to Moses, okay. Why the semicolons? Why the colons? Could it change the meaning to mean something else other than what the Calvinist reformers say? Here's some scripture you can look up, which I think doesn't necessarily have to do with punctuation, but it might change. It begins to lay out different things that could be spoken of in Romans 9 rather than election unto eternal salvation from eternity past. Unconditional election, the way they teach it. Here's the Darby. I know nobody uses the Darby, right? But I'm just going with some old versions versus new versions, the more common Calvinistic versions versus not. They too have parentheses, not capitalized. It was said to her, greater, lesser's a colon, comma, okay. Brackets, I don't even know what that means either, but that's the Darby. Here's the NIV, which puts poetry stanzas. I'm not saying it's poetry. I'm just saying when they took it from the Old Testament, they copied it the same. And it's weird how they take it from the Old Testament, which couldn't have been speaking about the Gentiles unless it was prophecy. Could it have been speaking about the Jews, which, well, wait a second, then Romans 9 is referring to Jews for what reason? So that some new doctrine can be taught that's never been taught before? And I know you'll say, no, it has been taught, but okay, fine, it has been taught before. But in this case, when they steal the very words from the Old Testament, talking about Jews, is that really Paul's intention to then change it from talking about Jews? I don't know. Here's the ESV, straightforward. Interesting. No brackets, no parentheses, no colons, no semicolons. Very interesting. And I know that I'm not a guru on Bible versions, but I know that Calvinist reformers, a lot of them use the ESV. They really enjoy it. Some promote it, such as John MacArthur has his name on the old ESV. Why is all that punctuation changed from the 1600 King James and the 1800 Darby? And I also looked up the Dewey-Rheims, I think it was 1898 American one, which also has colons and semicolons. Interesting, right? Okay, so I'm going to make this a two-parter. Head scratchers abound, but have you, Calvinist, Reformers, Tulip people, considered this odd punctuation in Romans 9, especially in these verses that you so adamantly say teach election and reprobation and chosen before time began, and they feed into irresistible grace and how things happen before you even have a soul, before they did anything good or bad, before you got a soul. God condemns it before he even creates and gives you a soul, which is a whole different video. Okay, two-parter. Have you ever considered the punctuation? what does the punctuation mean in English? Why did our English Bible translators choose to use this punctuation? We hope, of course, it was to teach us what these verses really mean. But if you only read the ESV or you only read the LSB, which does the same thing as the ESV, well, we might have something to look into. Head scratchers abound.